does a perfectly written contract exist? Hi, I'm Mercedes the TC, and I am a real estate transaction coordinator in California. And as a real estate TC, I can tell you that a perfectly written contract is pretty rare, and that's totally okay. We're here to help you through your transaction and help keep a close eye, as well as uphold the compliance integrity of your file and limit bigger issues that may come up later on. However, it is always nice to receive a neatly written offer. So I'm going to discuss the top 5 mistakes that I see agents make when writing purchase agreements so that you can avoid them in the future. So number 1, the close of escrow date is either missing or there's an incorrect date that was used. Here you have the opportunity to either enter a specific date or you can enter an amount of days. Now, I've seen a few contracts that have unintentionally missed this section entirely. In fact, I just received one the other day. So you want to be sure there is something here before proceeding, but missing the section completely is actually rare in comparison to when an agent enters a date that can't be used. Now, we're all familiar with popular holiday dates that we would automatically skip, like let's say 4th of July, for example. But even when it's not a well-known holiday, you want to be sure that it's actually a valid date to close. For example, you might enter the date, let's say April 5th, but that's actually a Saturday. Since we can't close escrow on a weekend, the close date would move forward to the next applicable business day. But let's say Monday's a holiday as well. This would mean that the actual close of escrow date would then be the following Tuesday. The best way to avoid this is to properly plan. Once a target date has been chosen, you'll want to review your calendar and be sure that the date that you're entering is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. And you definitely want to double check and be sure that escrow and the county recorder's office are both in fact open that day as well. Speaking as someone who's been on the receiving end of offers, sometimes multiple offers at a time, it really does show that you took the time to pay attention to that small detail. This is actually the one reason why I still keep a paper calendar on my desk at all times. As I am counting days to prepare my timeline, I'm confirming the days that need to be skipped as I move along. So if you're going to select a specific close of escrow date, I'd highly recommend to just double check and be sure that that is not a weekend or legal holiday, and also double check to be sure that your escrow office and the county recorder's office are both in fact open. Now, number 2 is all about the confirmation of real estate agency. This is also on page 1 of the purchase agreement, paragraph 2A, and we all know that agency is a huge deal, so it needs to be disclosed properly at all times. Now, this section specifies the broker and agent representing the buyer and seller. You'll see that there are 8 text boxes and 4 check boxes to complete in this section. Now, if any of these items are missing, incorrect, or incomplete, this whole section is incomplete and will need to be addressed in some manner. There are a couple of ways to correct this section if needed, but the recommended C.A.R. form is Confirmation of Real Estate Agency Relationships. The acronym is AC. Luckily, if this section is completed properly from the beginning, you can avoid needing the additional document. So here in the first line, it should include the name of the broker representing the seller, as well as the broker's license number over to the right. Then below that line should be the name of the agent representing the seller, as well as their license number. Now, beneath these lines, you'll see that there are 2 check boxes. This is where you will select whether the broker is representing just the seller or if it's a dual agency and they represent both sides. Now, once you click to select the appropriate box here, it will automatically check the appropriate boxes down below. Now, the buyer section would be completed exactly the same. You'll have the broker name, their license number, the agent, and their license number, and the boxes checked below. So if you're writing an offer and you're representing the buyer, I would highly recommend to double check this section before you move on, because you'll want to be sure that this is 100% complete. If you happen to be representing the seller while reviewing offers, you'll also want to double check this area to be sure it is accurate and complete. Otherwise, you will need to include some sort of correction to clean it up. So number 3, let's talk about the NHD report. Now, here in California, the Natural Hazard Disclosure Statement is a statutory disclosure that we need in our files, and this is provided by a third-party company who provides a Natural Hazard Disclosure Report. We call it an NHD report for short. Now, in my area, most of my agents will either enter the name of their favorite NHD company into the contract, or they will enter the words seller's choice. These are the most customary options for us here in Northern California, and it never really meant anything literal to me until I found out a couple of years ago that there is an actual NHD company called Seller's Choice. Can you believe that? In that transaction, my agent who was representing the buyer entered the Seller's Choice as the company choice for the report. A few days later, we received that NHD report from that specific company. Needless to say, we were all shocked, but none of us knew this company existed. It definitely threw us off, and man, I wish I would have thought of that. I would have been rich right now. But anyways, I shared this story with my agents years ago when it happened, but I thought it would make a good point in this video in that although I have absolutely nothing against this specific NHD company, I don't work with them often, but this was an instance I had seen them, I'm pretty positive that was not my agent's intent, and that what they really wanted is to convey that the seller could choose the company for the transaction. So moral of the story is, although seller's choice is acceptable verbiage to include for the NHD company, I would actually always recommend to enter the name of the NHD company that you actually prefer. That way there's no surprises. Hey there, thank you so much for watching. If you're finding value and this information has been helpful thus far, please be sure you're subscribed and have your notifications on so you won't miss any upcoming videos that I upload. And please click the thumbs up below to like this video. It lets me know that you enjoyed the information, and it will really help me grow my channel by letting YouTube know that it's good information to share with others who would also find it helpful. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now let's jump into number 4. So a little further down on the same page are the details for the home warranty. Now, it's customary here for agents to include the name of the home warranty company along with the plan options alongside the dollar amount that caps the cost of the plan as well. Agents are not entering enough money to cover the amount of coverage that they've written into the offer. And I find that there's usually 2 culprits. Number 1, either they are not keeping up with the cost of the plan, or number 2, their template no longer supports the current cost of the plan that keeps getting added automatically for them. Let's say, for example, you generally have your template set at $430 because you know most home warranties are around $450, but last month it changed to $475. Most of the time, the agent is going to pay for that discrepancy because it was an oversight on their part. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. Make sure your templates are up to date and that you're aware of the current cost. That way you don't have to worry about paying for a difference in something that was not intentional on your part. A good way to do that is to make sure that you keep a copy of the paper brochures somewhere accessible, easily accessible while you're writing offers, so that you can just grab them and take a look and see if the plan is current and what the cost is. The other thing that I like to do is to keep a PDF version. I actually keep all of mine saved in a Google Drive folder. That way, when it comes time for me to order the home warranty plan for the buyer, I can easily confirm that the current cost and coverage is matching what the agent wrote in the offer. Now, number 5 is a big one. Let's talk about entities and how to complete the section of the purchase agreement if your buyer is purchasing through an entity. Now, if the buyer is using, let's say, for example, their trust, an LLC, a corporation, something of that sort, this needs to be disclosed to the seller. And this would normally be done on a separate C.A.R. form, the representative capacity signature disclosure. Since we all love to save a piece of paper or two, C.A.R. has included this entity section into the purchase agreement where the information can now be disclosed without the need for the separate form. Now, this is pretty cool, but I will warn you that if the entity section is not completed correctly or in its entirety, a separate RCSD form will still be needed so that those details are fully disclosed to the seller. So I'm going to actually walk you through how to complete this section of the purchase agreement. I'll show you at my computer. Okay, so now I'm in my Zip Forms account and I have page 15 of the residential purchase agreement pulled up so I can walk you through the entries of how to complete this section for your buyer step by step. Now again, if this section is complete within the purchase agreement, you do not need a separate representative capacity signature disclosure to go along with your offer. So the first place you want to start is by checking box 32B. This indicates that there is an entity. Now you'll notice right now, I don't have any open spaces in this section, but as soon as I click this entity box, they're going to open up. So you want to check that box and it's going to allow you now to type in the spaces that would be applicable to what you're needing for your transaction. Now in 32B3, this is where you're going to enter the name, the legal name of the signer for the trust. In this case, let's just say the buyer's name is Buyer Smith, okay? If there were a second buyer, their name would go here. You just type it in that section there. Now in B5 is where you will enter the name of the entity if you are dealing with a trust or a probate. This would also include something like a conservatorship or a guardianship, and you will also need to include the case number. In this case, we're just going to enter the full name of the trust. So let's just say it's Buyer 1 Trust 2023, established 2023. Let's just say that's the full legal name, okay? Now, this section is pretty much done. What you'll now do is move down to 32D. Now, you'll notice that the name of the buyer, which is the entity, is already input. This is because I entered that name as the actual purchaser on the contract. This is the name that will populate throughout all the forms within Zip Forms, which is the actual buyer. You'll notice right above that you have a signature line and a date line. You'll notice below that the printed name of the legal authorized signer, it is exactly what you noted up top, what we put up top, which is Buyer Smith. And then next to that is their title. Now there are some entities where maybe a title is not needed. Usually with the trust, they are some sort of trustee. So I'm just going to use the general term trustee in this case, and I'm going to type that here. Now where the buyer will sign is above the printed name of the buyer. So this section right here is for their signature, and this section right here is for their date. If you had two buyers, then the second buyer's information would be completed down here, and they would sign on this line and date on this line. So I hope that helps. And now you're all set. Those are my top 5 mistakes that I see, and I hope that this will help you the next time that you are preparing or writing and reviewing an offer. Please leave a comment down below and let me know if maybe you've run into some of these mistakes recently and perhaps what you've done to overcome them within your transaction. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I truly appreciate you. If you or maybe someone you know is looking for a transaction coordinator in the Northern California area, please visit Mercedes&Co to see how my team and I may be of service to you. Until next time, happy selling. Oh, check out this video. I think you'll like it.